What's up, guys? Tim Halstead here for episode 5 of tearing out the old 408 and getting ready for the 427 DragBoss aluminum block from Tim Meyer. Thanks, Tim, for all the help. This is going to be a big endeavor for me. Other people might undertake the same type of situation since the DragBoss is coming out. Last we had talked, I went over some specifics on this motor, head specifics, and kind of where I was up to date at this point in time. So let's start tearing this apart and checking out. We've had the valve covers off before, and you know what's under here, the yellow Terra. Ain't no big deal here. One thing I wanted to point out, though, if you can see back here, is the gaskets for the A3 heads in relation to like a strip Dampener intake, or the 4V heads. You can check that out. You can see there's such a mismatch that it's so raised, it's like a filled port. And that's the gasket there in relation to the strip Dampener. So let's move that out of the way. We don't need that here. I like to keep everything neat. Got these from years of working in the operating room. Tons of blue drapes. Can always use them. Great for keeping messes off the garage floor. Got a table here of everything I'm taking and sending to Tim Meyer. You can see the vacuum pump back there. But we know this comes off pretty easy. I always worry about this makeshift table blowing it down, breaking. I don't know about you guys, when you set valve lash, they always say to do it on a hot motor so everything's expanded. A trick I've learned, and I don't know if other people do it, is I measure them when they're cold, and then I just set them when they're cold instead of messing around with them hot and oil all over the place. I think they add about 6 thousandths for aluminum heads. This is like 15 thousandths here. Nice. I don't like them dragging too tight. Like them just a nice easy pull. So there's 21 thousandths. I think these are 22. But like I said, I like to take my stuff apart on top dead center for each cylinder. That way there's no tension on it, the springs, not worry about blowing things apart, spring coming apart. But with these type of setups for the yellow Terra, that's how you adjust them, right there. So let me put my board here that I used to work on. Thanks again, guys, for the help you've given me, Menser and Riding at Quit Performance. And like I was saying on the last video, there's a pin that keeps these from rotating back and forth. It's not in the fulcrum, I misspoke there. It's in the stud itself, and that's what locks it into the head to keeps it from rotating. And I don't know what the torque is, but it's pretty damn tight, that's for sure. But here's the rocker arm assembly coming off now. I'll kind of show you what it looks like. This is the intake. But here's how it's set up. Great rocker arm setup. I always like to make sure these are rolling without any friction or catching, which they're not. Same with the fulcrum. Nice rotation. I've been running this same set probably 18 years. Long time. Push rod, 135, and it's 8.450 for the intake. Let's see what the exhaust looks like into length. I'm running titanium valves, so they have lash caps on them. These are probably the last set of NOS Ford Motorsport titanium intakes. We got a pretty smoking deal for them. And here's the exhaust coming off. Same thing, rotates like a dream. Set that there. Here's this push rod. This is CV Products. 80 thousandths, 8.400. So obviously you write this down, keep track of it, and then I put each one of these individually into their own Ziploc bag so I can keep it organized. Now these here can kind of come off sometimes, and that's what I'm talking about. You can see this is the fulcrum, and it bolts into that, and that's what keeps it from rotating side to side, so you don't need guide plates or a stud girdle. And there's a pin roll pin that's drilled and set into the head, and that keeps it locked up. And there's little shims that you can either make or buy to set up for your roller clearance in regards to the valve stem and the tip of the rocker arm. So like I said, I'll go through each set of these, take them out, check them out, make sure, inspect them, make sure they're cool, and, you know, better head, like the Higgins, the Cook, or CHI heads. I failed to mention, you know, Edelbrock has a head for a Cleveland, Trick Flow has a head, CHI has a few heads, AFD has a few heads. One thing I can say, at least for the newer heads, with this A3 head, it's really just an iron head with the ports cut off, cast that way, and then raised. So it has the Cleveland type combustion chamber, which likes quench. Cleveland's like quench. The tighter the better. That's how these things run. So the combustion chambers on the latter cylinder heads are more the figure 8, the high efficiency type. And they pick up horsepower there. All those, the Yates heads, all the AFDs, CHI, just it picks up a big difference on them with that flow characteristic. So at this point, I'm going to stick with what I got. Let's keep going. So like I was saying, the thing that I think is missing in regards to hot rod is, I don't know if there's a lot of young kids into it. You know, they're into that import stuff, that tuner stuff, and hey, that's up to them. That ain't me. It's not into that scene. You know, you can't beat 700 horsepower of thumping Cleveland or Windsor or whatever it is compared to that wind-up stuff. So definitely gotta go with the V8 power on that. noise isn't bothering people, that's the heater. But like I said, not a lot of young kids into the hot rod scene. Although at the strip you see these high school classes, so the kids are coming out for that, and that's a good thing. I want my kids to learn how to work on cars. Even though I have 2 little girls, I think they're into it. It's an important thing to pass down. It's not anything you can read in a book. You got to start doing it and enjoying it. And I figure from a young age, my dad was the same way. He was into hot rods. Helped me build my first Cleveland. That was 37 years ago. And I enjoy that aspect with my kids. I want to carry on that routine. There again, here's an intake pedestal. It looks like this. And then there's a shim underneath there to get the rocker arm geometry. That's how you change it. So I'd be interested to see what other people run for motor oil. What's their take on that? You know, the big issue was with the solid cams was the fact that there wasn't enough zinc. It's causing the lifters to go bad for that break-in aspect. I think we talked pretty much about, you know, cooling on a Cleveland. I like to use a thermostat. The fact that the importance of filling the block for stability, at least from my point of view. And other people kind of think the same way. And then, as I mentioned before, with the DragBoss, I don't know if we'll be filling those. Probably couldn't hurt, but do you need to? That's a question that Tim Meyer will have to answer. I think people have talked about it before. People talk about what makes a combination go. You know, how do you go faster than a quarter mile? And the answer to that is there's so many variables. Everything plays an important component or a part of it. And you got to have that combination, so to speak, tuned for that to work well. All those combination of parts have to work together in harmony, so to speak, to get the best results. So, you know, if you're going to make power, you got to be able to put that power down, which means you got to have a good suspension both in the front and rear, which we'll talk about another time, and then like the transmission. I don't know if other people build their own transmissions. I do all my own transmission work. You know, I worked in a tranny shop. Thanks, John. Got his transmission for all the years while I was going to school at night, working there doing trannies. So I took a lot of that with me. So I like to do my own tranny work. I know what works in a C4 to make them last. I've got a lot of information from Jay Broder, great guy to deal with. We've talked about that before. He's been mentioned on the net. I think if you can do everything yourself, that's where you save your money. If you can build your motor yourself, great. Do your training yourself, your rent and all that kind of stuff, that's where you learn and you save money. It gets a point, though, when it's not feasible to do your own work. So I'm going to pull this dampener off. These are sometimes a pain in the butt to do, but I put on my puller. It looks pretty good. Bolts are tightened. So let's see what we can do. And then when you put these on, you should use an installer too. Kind of looks like this. Little bearing to help slide that on, less friction. Back in the day, I can remember people beating on balancers. Crazy. That's all there is to it. Pry bar in the back to initially get it to break free. That's what that looks like, triangulated. It fits in the crank. And that's the way they slide off. Should slide off easy without beating on the thing. This is an ATI Super Dampener. Great dampener. Set up for internal balance with this crankshaft.